It's 2009. I'm walking through Midtown on my way into Grand Central Station. It's a little busy. I'm on the sidewalk, and I get a phone call, and it's from this executive that I had met a couple years earlier, executive at a small ad tech startup called AdECN, and he's asking my opinion. He's like, "Hey, listen, I'm going to launch a DSP," and I'm like, "I don't know. There's a lot of DSPs, Jeff." Fast forward, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeff Green. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Do you remember that phone call?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I said, go for it. You're likely to blow the doors off and change the whole game, which, by the way, you did.
Thanks for the encouragement.
There we go.
Yeah.
I got to start off with a you're right. So
I love it. You can stop there, too.
We started the day with Google, and I lamented, Sean, that his organization had made me bring up cookies again. I fucking hate that topic because they keep making more and more announcements. But I do remember one thing, which is in February of 2020, the very first time that Google announced that they were going to be planning to deprecate cookies, this guy wrote a post saying, "I call bullshit. I don't buy it. I don't believe they will." And I'm like, they are mentioning a policy, right? And you never believed that they would actually deprecate cookies. And 5 years later, after Lucy's pulled the football or the cookie away from Charlie Brown numerous times, as it turns out, that's actually how it manifested. What caused you to think that it wasn't going to manifest?
So I always start many of these strategic chess moves by starting with what would I do if I were in their position.
Okay.
So if I had been handed the cards that they had, I don't think it's in their best interest to get rid of cookies. That's what I said back then. It's interesting, you get to 2025 and everybody says, yeah, I saw that coming. But in 2020, when I made that assertion, there was a lot of pushback saying, no, it's going to happen. How more clear could they be?
Right.
And I just look at it as Google's strategy to that point had been to distribute decisions into the org as much as possible. But I didn't believe that was in the best interest of big Google. And that as those policies get louder and louder, you get more attention from Sundar and others that are going to look at that and say, I'm not sure if that's in the best interest of us. And what this really boiled down to is Google for years was doing things that is antitrusty, using privacy as a shield. Right. They're not the only one. They might have been the best at it, but they definitely did that. And I was making the prediction that their antitrust concerns were growing at a faster rate and a bigger concern for them than their privacy concerns, and that they were not going to be able to hide behind that and do antitrusty things using privacy as a shield. And that was at the core of my prediction.
And when push comes to shove, you just look at overall incentives, and you can predict action.
Exactly.
So
at least at a corporate level. Individuals, that's not always true.
Right. Well, you have to factor it's layered, right? You got the corporate, you got the individuals.
Exactly.
The shareholders. You have been one of the most loudest proponents of the open internet. And yet, if you were to canvass, I guess we should parse the open internet is, in our parlance from this morning's State of Digital, what Jeff would describe as the open internet would be anything that's not walled gardens, I believe. I'm putting words in your mouth. So it's hedged gardens like CTV, Commerce Media, and the open web. Would that be an accurate?
Yeah, I would just say, I think it nets out to the same thing as what you just said. And by the way, when we were prepping for this, he said, I'm going to ask you about the open internet, but don't take the whole 15 minutes on the open internet. That's why I'm going to talk fairly fast. But the open internet is where competition exists, where it thrives, where there is not a single player that owns the entire supply chain from advertiser to publisher. So when you are controlling the supply chain from advertiser to publisher, you have the ability to be a walled garden and also to be draconian. You don't have to be transparent on pricing. You don't have to be transparent on measurement. And the open internet is the place where all of that is required. Not because there aren't players in that space that would like to control it, but because you are not able to. And that's the portion of the internet that we built our business for, the one where we can go compete, because we've always just wanted to compete in a fair market. And so the open internet is not just what happens in the browser. And that's a really important part, because when I hear assertions that the open web, and sometimes in some people's minds they have a distinction between the open web and the open internet, and I actually think most people use them interchangeably. But the open internet is the place where all movies is monetized, all television is monetized, all journalism is monetized, all sports is monetized. And where competition exists, music, we almost left that one off. That competition is really essential to that all working. And so when you look at it as this is the best of the open internet, and the most prominent walled gardens are social, where you have 10-second videos, right. And then YouTube, where it's often user-generated content. Those are the most prominent walled gardens. When you contrast that to the rest, I just think that the open internet has been, in some cases, misdefined, but it has also been dramatically underestimated. This is where the best of the internet exists, and it is not going anywhere. And so when I say things like on our last earnings call, that the open internet has never been healthier than it is right now, and the future for the open internet has never been better, that's not just because of the recent antitrust rulings. That's also because of how all of those are competing with each other and thriving. Yep. And streaming wars has helped that. That is great for consumers. That's right. Great for the internet. That's the open internet that we're talking about.
The professional content. This morning, we framed in our State of Digital 3 broad parameters we saw applying to the industry having the biggest impact. AI, obviously, which we'll come to. Outcomes, right? People wanting performance and going beyond legacy proxies. And third was this sort of fragmentation of media consumption, including maybe a redefinition of UGC based on the sort of growth and quality of the creator economy sort of contributions to those large platforms. We noted that some of these social networks, Instagram is only 7% friend connections. It's 93% entertainment. So it's mimicking what you would describe as the more quality professional stuff in the open internet. How does it parse? If the creator economy is blowing up and we're seeing mass fragmentation of now higher and higher quality, how does the trade desk, or how should companies in the ecosystem capture that opportunity?
Yeah, so I think the lines, and I think Krishan said this well as it relates to the lines between brand and performance are going away. Yep. And the lines between professional content and social content, in a way, are also going away. Because if you have 100 million followers, it might make sense to make that professional quality content. You might not be filming that by yourself. It might not just be selfies that those celebrities are taking. And it's a huge part of the way that they make money. They build their own brands. So I'm not taking away from any of that. Yep. But there is a big difference between monetizing a post that somebody makes on their own that is meant to be consumed in a few seconds versus the professional quality content of those channels that I just described. Yep. I believe that's at the core of the open internet, but I also believe that's at the core of media consumption in our lives. If you make me choose between cat videos and that list of quality content, I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, cat videos is sort
You're
of
a big fan, I know.
YouTube circa 2007 maybe, but I mean, look at Gen Z or Gen Alpha. The preponderance of them view TV. That's their starting point. Is they start on YouTube. I mean, it's the current market share leader. So I think, yeah, those dynamics I'm sure are changing. We had a session today, and we talked earlier about the digital advertising supply chain being sort of plagued with fragmentation, opacity, and inefficiency. We've described that as shenanigans. I think you guys have a more colorful adjective to describe it.
Fuckery.
But yeah, fuckery. There we go. But it is a mess. I think if we polled everyone in this audience, we'd get a pretty high percentage of hands that would say, yes, it's a problem. Yes, we need to fix it. But how?
Well, so this is what's great about competitive markets is, and I was having this conversation this morning with a seller to us. We don't necessarily have to, if I stop buying product from Ralph's because I don't like their bread and I buy it from Vons, I don't have to send them a letter saying this is why we're not buying your bread anymore. We, across our industry, have tons of choice. And competition has led to lots of confusion and complicated and convoluted supply chains, but it has also led to a more important ingredient, which is competition. And in the environment where it's now a fairer playing field, I believe it's possible for sell-side players to compete in a way that they haven't for most of the last decade.
Enter curation.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to take the form of curation, right, but just to facilitate better transactions on behalf of the seller and the publisher. And that if they do that well, and they do that transparently and fairly and honestly, then they'll do well. But some have taken shortcuts and said, it's easier to lie than to play the game that way. And so the way that we combat that is to spend more and more resources making certain that we're buying what people say they're selling to us. And because of the power of choice, and as well as, incidentally, AI has a great application for this. If we're looking at the number of paths to get from us to a particular publisher, in some cases can number into the thousands. We'll look through all of those and make decisions in very quick, obviously milliseconds, in order for us to place those ads. But AI plays a significant role in us improving the supply chain. But we take all the metadata and make better decisions because of competition, and the markets are working.
Right.
They're getting better.
Okay, so competition. You've also got OpenPath, that initiative to more directly connect demand and supply. How does that manifest a more SPO or more supply chain optimization?
Yeah, as we said in our most recent earnings report, OpenPath is both a stalking horse and a canary in the coal mine.
Okay.
So there are some publishers that want to do their own yield management.
Right.
They're very big. They have lots of people. There's too much at stake. If you're a big content creator and provider like a Disney, of course you're going to do your own yield management, especially over time. Many of the big media companies might be a little late to programmatic and some of the tech required to participate in the space, but they are moving very quickly, and they do want to own and manage their own yield management tools. So we're happy to connect with them directly and make it possible for us to see in very short supply paths what's happening, and then that becomes easier to compare to the alternatives.
Yep.
So OpenPath plays a critical role, but as I also said on the earnings report, I do not expect it to be our primary, and over time, I hope it's not even the largest, because I believe that competition and those that focus on doing that one thing, which is yield management for publishers, can earn their keep.
Yep.
But to date, many have decided instead to focus on auction fuckery or things like it, instead of focusing on yield management, where I think there's more opportunity. And incidentally, I think there are all different types of SSPs. I'm not criticizing the category.
Right.
I'm criticizing specific players, and more specifically, specific behaviors that I think can improve.
And go ahead and name those.
Yeah, I'll write those down.
Yeah. We talked a lot about outcomes and the sort of migration towards performance this morning, and we've, obviously it's on the top of a lot of CMOs' minds. What tools do you have? Because you largely are selling on a CPM. We've seen the rise of some of the intermediaries that play on a more CPI, CPA, sort of more performance basis, garner a tremendous amount of scale and a tremendous amount of operating leverage from that more sort of cost of goods sold approach. Is that in the trade desk's future, or do you see limitations from taking that approach?
Oh, no, absolutely. So just to be clear, the transactions are done at an impression level, because that currently is the most granular level that we can transact with scale and price discovery. So there may be a time where we transact on impression or something other than impressions, where it's like attention or seconds in view or any of those types of things. I know there's been people that have tried to advocate for something like that. But enabling fungibility as well as strong measurement, as well as all the performance that comes with it, I think we're with this model for quite some time.
Yeah.
That does not mean that the outcomes have to be based on that.
Right.
That's just the unit of transaction. But everything is performance, everything. Even brand, it's just a question of where you are in the funnel and where you're moving them and what the metrics are to show success for your location in the funnel. What we've mistakenly done in advertising is we have given all the credit to the very bottom of the funnel. So you show thousands of ads winning hearts and minds, and then somebody types in buy Mercedes-Benz, which incidentally, they talk in terms of years at Mercedes in terms of developing customers. So you spend 20 years creating a brand affinity in a consumer's mind, and then they type in buy Mercedes-Benz. It would be a mistake to say, well, all the credit belongs to Google. Because, of course, it was thousands of touches and interactions, many of those where you're appealing to the hearts and minds of the consumer in a very engaging way that was only showing its fruits when you typed that in. And so we as an industry have to improve upon this. There's so much to do in outcomes. There's so much to do in the way that we measure. And there's more data than there's ever been. But we have to change the way that measurement and success is rewarded. And that's historically been just a bottom of the funnel activity, which we call performance. The idea that this is performance or performative and this is not is utterly ridiculous.
Right.
It's just where it sits in the funnel, and the success metrics are very different. But they're all based on outcomes. They are all based on data, and those will continue to blend and fuse, and we will think more and more about the way we compensate everybody on the soccer field, but we just can't pay the soccer players that are touching the ball last before it goes in the goal. Otherwise, you don't have a midfield, you don't have a goalie. You're playing soccer like 5-year-olds. You all hover around the ball and just try to be the one to kick it. It's just not an effective way to play the game.
You sound like you're describing our slides from State of Digital this morning. Question just came to me. We didn't talk about it previously, but Google has now suffered 3 losses to the government on antitrust in play, search, and ad tech. And I was curious, I think you were quoted as saying, I continue to believe that Google will stop trying to monetize the open internet and instead focus more on their destinations, their O&O properties. Do you believe they'll do that proactively or reactively to the government's?
Honestly, it's not that important to me as long as we end up in the same place, which I do believe that's in their best interest. I think there's 2 centers of gravity. Yeah. Either you head towards competition and the open internet, or you head towards the Facebook model of doing business, which is to essentially say, we stop trying to monetize the open internet, we don't give a shit. We are just focused on monetizing Facebook and Instagram and our properties, and our AI-driven performance marketing engine is so great that this is the first place you should come spend. Mm-hmm. And I believe that they're swimming in so much inventory in YouTube, and their entire enterprise is under attack because of AI. And that if they're not ahead of Perplexity in Gemini monetization, we are looking at the end of an era for Google. The company, in the same way that Steve Ballmer stood up and said, this company rises or falls with Windows. If there is no Windows, there is no Microsoft, is what he said 20 years ago. I believe Sundar should be saying, if there is no search, if there is no search monetization, there is no Google. And if that is not well understood, if they're not circling the wagons, focusing on the things that really pay shareholders, then they're distracted, and the odds of them succeeding from this point forward in terms of the company growing beyond what it is right now, I think are limited.
We suggested that them being out of this business was better for all parties, including Google.
Exactly.
So taking
and so in the same way that we talked about cookies saying that's in their best interest to move away from, I'm once again looking at this from their lens, which is what is in the best interest of Google. And I believe that is for them to leave the open internet. That will leave a massive hole that the people in this room will have to fill. All right. And that is, I think, a huge opportunity, the biggest we've ever seen.
All right, we're going a little over here, but we're going to do a little lightning round. So you've announced Ventura, an OS for the TV ecosystem that you've developed, that you want to provide these players that are monetizing CTV inventory. What earns the Trade Desk the right to provide that critical infrastructure when you consider that these new monetization, media monetizations of these OEMs and other companies are actually driving the big substantial businesses and some cases the majority of their financial results?
Yeah, I don't think we have a right to it, if you will. I just think we have an opportunity, which is, as we've had conversations with many of the OEMs, if you look at the situation that they're in, the price of their units or the margin on their units is going to negative. They are going to make no money between the cost to build the box and the MSRP. So it's been heading in that direction for a long time. And they're all looking at it saying, we know it's going there. The only way to be competitive is to have a way to monetize this box after we give it to the consumer. In almost all cases, they are looking at it saying, we've got to get into advertising. And there are some of them, there's some good case studies from LG and some of the others that got into this a bit earlier. But almost all of them are looking at it saying, I don't know much about advertising. And this place feels very complicated and very convoluted. And we're looking at this saying, we think this once again plays to Trade Desk's strengths, which is that we don't own any content and we don't have any of the conflict of interest that many of the other players have in this space. So whether they're also creating TVs and hardware and creating content the way many of the other operating systems are, it creates an opportunity for us to partner with those OEMs in the same way that we have with content creators all over the world, and some of the biggest in the world, whether that's NBC or Paramount or Disney or Spotify or so many others. The fact that we don't have conflict with them is what makes it easier for us to partner. We think we can do that again. And we're betting on the fact that the advertising ecosystem and monetizing ads is really complicated. And that developing those models where they can do well without, in most cases, owning content, but finding a way to be in the ad space without having to learn it all overnight, while also building their OSs, which have historically not done very well. Most consumers don't like them. I would argue that the reason why Roku has so much market share, why Amazon has caught up to some extent, is because the user interactions with those others have not been good.
Yeah, V1 was definitely left a lot to be desired. Of course, they've all rapidly, figured out a little bit of software in the meantime. So you're there, so they're in the honeymoon phase of monetizing media, and you're there to capture them when they hit that trough of disillusionment, and you can sort of provide something that turns out to be hard.
Well, yeah, we can do it before or after the trough, but we think that there's an opportunity for us to help.
So let me ask you this. Zeta had 15 quarters in a row beaten raise. You had 33 quarters in a row beaten raise until you didn't in the fourth quarter. I want to hear from, and obviously you came raging back in Q1, so congratulations there.
Thank you.
Tell us about how that impacted the company from a culture or strategy standpoint.
I think in the long run, we'll look back on the miss in Q4 as one of the best things that ever happened to us. And it's in large part because it's in those moments. I mean, yes, there was a lot of criticism. There was a lot of hate. I didn't expect to get that turned up. I didn't understand the disconnect. And from my standpoint, we have always behaved the same way. We're the same people that were in this. We were never motivated by the money. We were always in this to improve the open internet, and that's why we still do it today. We believe we can make a difference in the space, and that's why we continue to operate the way that we are. But there were a lot of people that also said, oh, this is it for them. This represents the end. And that was incredibly motivating. So I think the team, I mean, I would argue that the economic environment didn't lower its uncertainty between Q4 and Q1.
That would be a correct statement. Yes.
So the fact that we beat by so much in Q1 was as much fueled by our team saying, we want to prove them wrong. We want to do what's the best for the open internet and prove that we're here to win it and we're in it for the long haul. But I also believe that's true of our customers and our clients.
Right.
That we have a lot of loyalty among our customers and clients that they too wanted to send that same message. So I overall, in moments like that, in moments of trial, one, you prove who you are by how you respond. And then two, you also find out who your friends are. Who are the people that really believe in you? Who are the people that were waiting for you to fall? Who are the people that were glad you did? And you use that as motivation to prove them wrong. And then the others you use to align with. Yep. And to go win together. And it's created more opportunity than it ever did setback. And it also, Bill Gates has been quoted as saying before, he gets credit for a lot of quotes, by the way, that I think he got from others, but maybe he's a great curator of wisdom in that sense. But he said, success is a lousy teacher. And so it's really easy in successful companies to get complacent. That's something I don't think that we've done, in part because we're competing with the biggest companies in the history of capitalism. So we know that every day we have to bring our A game. But looking at what went wrong, how can we improve with just a better microscope, is part of why we were able to do so well in Q1 and why we think the future is so bright for us.
Well, I hope you wear that chip on your shoulder well going forward, because I think you're right. I think that could really help. By the way, just once, I want a very successful entrepreneur or CEO to say, we're in it for the money, but I doubt you're going to hear that. So you're famous for not doing M&A. Or infamous with investment bankers. But a little deal this year. Mike Sullivan, where are you? And as you and I discussed, it's not religious. What's your summarize? I know we're over time, but this is a good answer, or this is a good question. We'll see what the answer is.
Yeah, it'll be good too.
What is your approach to the idea of build versus buy?
So if you zoom out, there's $1 trillion in global advertising, more or less. And if you look at what we did last year, we're less than 2% of that TAM. Yeah. We think that our core business model has so much room to grow that we don't want to get distracted by something else. So I fully recognize that if Facebook had not acquired Instagram, they would not be who they are. We just talked about how at the core of Google now is YouTube, which they also bought in acquisition. I think those two are two of the greatest acquisitions in the history of the internet. Yep. There is absolutely a time and place for it, so I don't dismiss that as an option, but I just never want it to be a distraction. Okay. Because our core business and everything we've been working for is about monetizing the open internet, making those supply chains more efficient to compete with the walled gardens, and we don't ever want to get distracted by it. So I love it when we find things like AdBrain or we find things like Sincera, so that we can make the supply chains more efficient and go faster. We'll continue to look. We have a very healthy balance sheet. To me, there is no question that AI is bringing a level of innovation that we've not seen since the dot-com boom. And I do believe that will create more and more opportunities for us to put our very strong balance sheet to work.
Okay, guys, book next week, non-distractive M&A ideas. Not against it, out of principle. Hey, just to finish up, you are involved with an organization, Build On, and Team Dia, that works with a lot of folks in ad tech to build schools in developing nations. We highlighted them this morning. Jay's been working the venue, talking to a lot of people. Just tell us a little bit about your experience and why this is an important mission for you.
Yeah, so I only learned about Build On through Jay, and he just really advocated. And I should say that I have a family foundation. I publicly pledged to give away 90% of my wealth. There is nothing that is more. Oh, thank you. I don't know of anyone else who's pledged to give that percentage of their wealth. There's nothing more important to me than education. While I wish that there was a way to fund an upgrade in parenting, because I believe that's the most important activity in the world, the second is education. But we invest in anything that can be data-driven and that we can prove can have a positive impact on the world. I met Build On through Jay Sears, and Team Dia essentially raises money for them. They're able to build schools for essentially $40,000. I was blown away by that number and wanted to be a part of it and wanted to see it. And he said, why don't you come with us on a build? We were initially supposed to go, and then this pandemic happened, because we were talking about it long before the pandemic happened. But then we went to Senegal. I took my children with us. We slept on dirt floors. It was a very tense topic of discussion with my kids, but life-changing. for them. And so I was so happy to be a part of it. Really what Jay and team are doing is amazing work. I can't endorse it enough. And what they're doing at Build On is changing the world. So I'm so grateful to be a part of it. It's one of many initiatives that we're pursuing at Data Philanthropy, where former Microsoft employees like Jed Nahum and Steve Cattleman from Omnicom work with me there. So if anybody wants to talk about things we could do together, feel free to talk to either of them. But also as it relates to building schools in impoverished nations, please reach out to Jay Sears and be a part of Team DIA, because I can't endorse them enough.
Awesome. Jeff Green.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.